Is that working okay?
Perfect. Thank
Thank you so much. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me along to this event, and happy Befriending Week. I've really enjoyed all of the social media that's been led by Befriending Networks, the stories and the visuals. It's just been such a celebration, and that's really what it should be when people are working alongside people. I think, some of my earliest work and some of the best days of my life were actually going along to befriending events and hearing the stories of change for the befriender and the befriendee. It was game changing for some people, and actually, it's just such an important thing. And today I've been asked to talk about collaboration. So I kind of really I'll need to get some help to do that. So I'm going to get some help from a number of different people during the day. So you get an illustration of some of the people who are going to be helping me to talk through some reflections and challenges on your thinking about what partnership and collaboration is. So you can expect to hear from all of these people today at some point. So this will keep you awake because I've got the early session to see if you can start it. So collaboration. It's an interesting word, and people use it in different ways, and it means different things to different people. Some people might say that this illustration is a collaboration, but for me, it's very much one element is in control and one element is not in control, and one element has all the resources and another element doesn't. The power between the two is not equal. And also what we see is that actually the ability of that dog to get a walk is getting his outcomes. So if you're satisfying a funder, you've made your outcomes happen, but actually can that dog speed up and run away or be carotid? So there's something about exploring a bit more what we mean by collaboration, and I'm going to reflect on a lot of different things to really get you thinking about it, because I really do feel at this point in our history that collaboration across sectors, across communities, and sharing power equally is the only way we're going to survive moving forward in these challenging times around resources, but changing society. So actually we need to really figure out what collaboration means in action. So let's take a further look at what collaboration can mean. I think it's important to say how we got to that illustration before about the helicopter and the dog. And we can see that services across communities and relationships between services and communities has evolved over the years. And the first one, the civic paradigm, is where you get the Downton Abbey bit. Basically 16th to 20th century. We've all seen Downton Abbey, absolutely love it. So it might not be some people's favourite, but it's very much about people deserving and undeserving, very hierarchical, and also things weren't fully developed. So not everyone was receiving equal services and not everyone had an equal voice. And when we moved on to the state paradigm, then it was a really exciting time for Britain, and it stands up still in the whole world in terms of what happened around welfare reform at that time in Beveridge. And it was game changing in terms of services free at the point of contact for local citizens. But it was of its time and developed in the 40s. And really interestingly, that our society has changed since then. And it was very much then as people as passive recipients. But other areas were not factored in. So things around care for children and for older people were very much about the wife stayed at home, looked after the children, and then looked after her and her husband's parents. So in a lot of budgets still now, in a lot of areas, care isn't built in as part of a service, and that is why we've had to innovate around this and make community connections happen and family connections, but they're not all there. And befriending is a big part of that. So there's something about reflecting on that time. And then we moved into the market paradigm, and this is very much only fools and horses. And this was very much the time of Blair Brown, and without being political, but it was a market time where services to local people became very much a commodity, and customers became people who had expectations. And it was very much about how many people you could get through the door, how many people you could see, 10-minute GP appointments. We've all seen them. I've just been to one recently, and it's crazy. You're only allowed to bring one problem. It's very interesting. But that was because everything became about efficiency, and people were very much seen as a customer in this setup, and it was very much about transaction process over people. And we still see that today. You'll all experience that in your communities and your organisations. Quite often it's about waiting lists rather than good treatment. It's about not being able to have some services because there isn't the resource to provide them, when people actually should be determining what's important to them. And then what we're moving into now, and what I'm really excited about because it's starting to evolve, and befriending is a massive part of the community paradigm. And it really started to emerge. It's much more about people enabling, working alongside, sharing power, strengthening the sectors right across the piece, and looking at people as collaborators, neighbours, and co-producers. So there's been quite an interesting evolution right across the sector, but we can see how in some ways the power paradigm has developed, and then the word collaboration then can mean different things. But in the community paradigm, what we expect to see and what we've started to see in really brilliant places where this practice is happening is it's not focusing on what's wrong with people, it's focusing on what's strong. It's focusing on opportunity rather than trying to resolve a problem. It's less about grants that are short term or investment that's short term. It's much more about long term change and natural supports in communities. And what we're starting to see is that power is more equally balanced between communities and the people that serve them. And I'll challenge you later on about sometimes whether we need services at all in some elements, in some illustrations. Sometimes it's better to get back and get out of the way. There's a big focus on neighbourhoods and communities and place. But again, it's very much about citizens, neighbours and co-producers as opposed to people who are dependent, who are clients and customers who need something. It's actually, we're all equal here. We all have different skills and talents to bring. And it's very much about developing potential rather than fixing. When you fix something, if the person isn't part of that response, then that fix doesn't stay. We've all seen that before. People talk about early intervention and prevention, but if that is something that is prescribed, then it doesn't last. Everyone has to be part of their own life and part of their own solutions, and that's when great collaboration starts to occur. So a bit of a challenge here. This is Cormac Russell's work around asset-based community development, and a lot of you'll know about that. I've been really working with Cormac now for well over 15 years. He really informed a lot of the work I led in vibrant communities in East Ayrshire. But there's something here about collaboration and the conditions for that. And you'll all recognise this. It's kind of black and white, so it's probably somewhere in between for all of you in terms of the work that you do. But if you do something to someone, and that would be a medical model, and that might need to happen at times where there's an intervention, an operation has to happen, or something had to be administered because someone's an acute problem. And then so you do something for someone, they're still dependent, but you do it for them. And then there's doing with. And in a lot of ways, befriending would fall into that category where you design things alongside communities and people in services and volunteers would work alongside people to co-design things and take things forward and build strengths. But the fourth one I want you to consider and to really challenge is by. Quite often, local people living in local communities don't need any intervention. What they need is help to connect and be enabled and to unlock skills and talents. And I'm greatly interested in really good collaboration when it happens is about horizontal connections, not connections from outside, but connections to your neighbour and to local groups and to other communities that are doing good work. And some of the best work that I ever saw around community-led work was connecting one community to another quite a few miles apart and them sharing each other's stories and the services getting out of the way and people determining what they wanted for themselves. So it's a really interesting model that, and I invite you to reflect on it some more. And the work of Cormac Russell is very challenging. And it's where do you see yourself in terms of what you provide in there, and what does that look and feel like? And which is the most sustainable model going forward in terms of being able to resource it, but also it lasting beyond any organisation or institution or funding cycle or political cycle. So other work around collaboration has been really interesting. The work of Dr. Christy Docherty at the Edinburgh Futures Institute, she's doing some amazing work, and I invite you to look into that as well. And she's leading some very innovative work right across sectors here, about people working across boundaries to work together. And she's done a lot of scientific studies. I'm not going to dwell too much in the science of this, but it's very, very interesting. And she's kind of isolated the key areas that stop collaboration working, that really get in the way. And this is really good for you to work through in your community or in your team to say, are any of these things get in the way of us working together deeply and equally? Is it that we're inflexible? Is it that the organisation we lead or even our community organisation is siloed and is really focused in itself? Because the minute an organisation is formed, it can't help it. This is a human thing. It becomes protective of itself. Even though it's been set up to serve, it does look inwards. And particularly the case in public sector where I worked, legal departments aren't there to serve communities or to protect the organisation. And that's a really interesting thing, because good collaboration happens when there's flexibility in the structures and silos. And in fact, The structures are there to enable and not constrict. It's not my department, that's not my organisation, that's not my community group, you would need to go over there. It's something wider than that. The biggest single thing, of course, is power. And power is massive, and it needs to be deliberative, because in many ways we default around power. Again, it's human. So we might know more than someone, so that makes us an expert, so it makes us more powerful. We might be holding a grant, we might be holding the resources, we might be holding all of the relationships, and actually we're holding on to that. And power is the very essence of good collaboration, but it's equal power and it's deliberative. And we talk about everyone's skills and talents in an organisation, in a group, in a community. What do people bring to the table? And it's recognising that the person that empties the bins is just as important as the chief executive. Because if the bins aren't emptied, disease will spread and people will become ill. And so there's something about reflecting on, what does power look like for you and your community and your organisation, and is it equal, and is there anything more you can do? And the way to unlock power is to understand the skills and talents and hopes and dreams of the people that you're working alongside. Leadership's massive, and we'll talk about that later, but leadership in terms of what we're in today is very different from the hierarchical leadership that Beveridge would have envisaged, where it was very much based on winning the war. Leadership now is about letting go. It's about never getting what you want. It's about getting splinters in your bum because you're sitting in the fence trying to hear and listen and hold space. And it's a different kind of leader. It's not command and control. It's not hierarchical. It's someone that holds space, often leads from behind. And we've moved away from those days of ego-driven leadership. We still see it in many places, but that tends to create fear. And also emergent versus planned. We don't always know what's going to happen, and we definitely don't know in this society. If somebody would have told us 10 years ago that we were going to have a pandemic, that Donald Trump would be president, that all the things, the mad things that have happened would have happened, you would not have believed it. So there's something about being able to emerge, because sometimes planned approaches can restrict us. We stick to the plan because the plan feels safe and we've all agreed it. But society changes and conditions change, and it's really important to look at things through an emergent lens and see if there's anything we can do to change to make collaboration better. Evaluation and measurement, again, that takes us back to the market paradigm. If we spend all our time measuring and figuring out how good everything was and how many people took part, we lose sight of the people, and it becomes about people over process. I'm not saying there isn't value in making sure that things are done well, resources are spent well and things are done well, but actually if it becomes just about counting, or we put more effort into counting than we do about being alongside people, we'll lose sight of what we want to do. Conflicting interests is the biggest one, and some of the work I led across Ayrshire, a lot of my team had to go and get involved in mediation training, because it very much happened when things change in communities. There's always a bit of a civil war because everybody wants different things. And again, it was to be able to hold space for that, to hear everyone's conflict and then be able to move through it, not always agree, but be able to understand each other's point of view and move on. And the community power element that I really am interested in just now, you could construe a lot of what's happening around some of the work around the political parties that are emerging just now. Some people would say that waving a flag and setting fire to places could be construed as community power. Community power is about kindness and goodness and love. And actually it's about acknowledging people's conflicting interests and finding a way forward that's kind and good. And then finally, technology and data, and you'll all know this from a befriending perspective, we can become very, very remote. Although you can do these things brilliantly online like we are today, there's nothing beats the personal touch. And there's something about, it's brilliant for all of that. Security and data, though, sometimes means we can't share information, or we won't, or we use it as an excuse, so we can't serve the best way that we can. You know, can the police give me information? Can health give me information that will help me to help that family the very best way they can? If they won't tell me, I won't be as efficient in helping them. So Dr. Christy Docherty has done a lot of work around this, and I won't dwell too much on it because you're going to get the slides, but it's really interesting you know, take this back and reflect on it. But some of these effective collaboration, these are the conditions that we would see when effective collaboration is happening. It's about relationships, it's about knowing and the emergent, not knowing, sense making, accepting that we don't know what the hell's going to happen next, but know that we care about each other and that we've got the same risk appetite, that we're willing to move forward, we know what the goal is at the end. There's something again about the whole system being up for this, and we'll talk about that a wee bit later on. Everyone's got to have a collaborative mindset. If you've got a computer says no person in your team, they're the kind of the bottom line, they're how people will perceive you. So it's got to be a shared mindset. A hive mind, if you're watching Stranger Things again just now, that's maybe not a good example. And then again about inquiry, about problems, issues, beliefs, and sharing experiences. So it's a really interesting, and this work that Christie's done is very much around her PhD, but they're now bringing that to practice across sectors. So look into that work if you want to know a bit more. So back to the fun stuff. So if we apply all of this to The Wizard of Oz, which is my favourite film, I've got the mug today to see. I don't know if you can see it. So these four people met together. Are they equal partners? They met quite recently. They met on the road. Are they equal partners? Do they have a common purpose? Well, they all want to go and see the wizard together, so they're in the same journey. They build a relationship based in trust, so they get to know the skills and talents and the feelings of each other along the way. And it's also about the understanding of their needs and hopes and dreams and fears. Absolutely that witch, well, I was going to put her on here, but it's not Halloween anymore. But that was a collective fear that they worked together on. And we'll all remember lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, that was something that they pulled together on as well. So there's something about they understood each other and why they wanted to collaborate, how they could help each other to get on, what they would gain. Would it be a heart, a brain, some nerve, a home? But again, I know I'm being a wee bit flippant with this slide, but there's something really, really powerful about this. It's equal, very different characters, wanting the same thing and enabling each other to get through that as they go forward. It's very much about understanding and respecting the skills and talents that people have got. That's massively important. It might be that someone doesn't have a professional talent. When I used to do work in East Ayrshire and I led work around transformation, I was so interested in the skills and talents of the people. And I discovered a gravedigger who was a brilliant musician and who was really willing to do some work with young people. Now, nobody had ever asked him what he was good at. He was just seen as a gravedigger. So do you know the skills and talents of those round about you? And are you putting them to good use? Because when he played his guitar, it made his heart sing. And to be part of something and be seen with different hats on is really, really important. And that needs to be deliberative because we've all got hidden skills and talents, gifts of the heart and the hand and the head, and we don't share them. Or maybe we do share some of them and laugh about it. I like knitting when I'm at home. But actually, knitting's a very interesting activity, isn't it? We won't go into that. I'm not very good at it. But there's something about understanding what makes our own heart sing, what are our skills and talents, and sharing them in every setting and not hiding the fact that you are the very best karaoke singer in the room. And then there's using these to amplify. So if we know each other's skills and talents, we can collaborate effectively, but we are actually so much stronger because we share all of our skills and talents. We amplify each other, and that allows us to get to where our goal is. And of course, they got to see the wizard, but he was another character altogether, and we could do a whole presentation about his behaviour around collaboration, but that's for another day. So, what are the values then in culture and leadership for collaboration? We talked about shared vision and values and people at the heart of everything. At the front of our heads, although we've got processes and they're there to keep us safe, remember they formed during the market paradigm. We're about people in this room today. We're about people, in every story that I saw on LinkedIn and in social media that Susan and her team have been sharing are about people. It's not about the number of people that came. It's not about whether their confidence grew. It's about the people. So let's keep people at the heart of everything because you really can't go wrong with that. And then the next thing is about ensuring that everyone shares a collaborative mindset. I said this before. There's something about organisations and groups where we need to understand what people are thinking, but if we're really serious about collaboration, everyone needs to understand the same kind of have the same understanding of it and be able to model it because then people will see it from every angle that you come in, every lens that they see your organisation or your local group from, they will see people willing to collaborate and start to trust, which is so important. Active listening and coaching approaches takes away from hierarchy. So it becomes much more about the leader listening deeply and then people having their own solution and then talking that through and helping that to happen, enabling it, creating space, working alongside. So it's a completely different mindset and a different approach. Building trust and open communication and focusing on skills and talents that we've discussed. And all of this and all of you are about kindness. There's something that just made my heart sing, just hearing some of the stories and seeing some of the light and the on faces of people throughout this week, but also in my experience of the work that you all lead, that there's a real deep kindness in it. And it isn't a kindness that's dependent, that I'm doing something kind. Kindness comes both ways, doesn't it? And you know that. It's the biggest secret. It's the biggest, best kept secret. If you're involved in befriending or volunteering or serving your community, it makes you feel just as good as the person that you serve or work alongside. It's game changing for the person that's involved. Let's share that message, because not everybody gets it yet. They're still too transactional. So again, it's about being empowering and solution focused, focusing on strengths, what's strong and not what's wrong, and about creativity and innovation, not going with plan A and plan B, but sitting down and listening deeply to what plan C could be. And is that what reflects people's wishes and hopes and dreams? And again, about collective ownership of challenges and successes. We all own it together. So if things are going well, that's great. We celebrate that. If things aren't going so well, we say, what can we do together in this? What can we do to change this? So collaboration doesn't support any kind of blame or shifting. It supports a time to examine and learn from challenges going forward. And I promise you, Ted Lasso is one of my favourites. So just listen to your gut, and on the way down, check in with your heart. Between those two things, they'll let you know what's what. So if you're not into Ted Lasso, what I'm saying here is this is very human. This is about our love and kindness that we're talking about today. And I want to just finish now with someone who's a real role model for me, for Mother Teresa. And I think it sums it up so well around collaboration and the way she role modelled it across the world. I can do things you cannot. You can do things I cannot. Together we can do great things. So actually, individually or organisationally on its own, we can achieve things, yes, but actually understanding and uncovering what's round about us and working collaboratively, we can do amazing things together. And I know that you've started to demonstrate a lot of that this week, but I hope that's got you thinking about collaboration, and thank you so much.
Wow, thank you so much, Katie. That was really, really excellent. And I think you're going to press, you talked about a magic eject button, but yeah, take yourself off of screen share. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think there was lots in there that will get people thinking. And I think just absolutely that message of kindness and of people. And I would echo, thank you to all of our members for sharing their befriending stories this week.